Much. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our learning visible today. And so that's a little bit of pressure for students, but that's a good thing. We're going to learn together. And it can speed up our learning, by the way, too, as you're going to hear from some of the stories that you're going to hear from some of the faculty that are here. So I'm going to just pause this for a little bit and talk a little about this room and the other active learning rooms in a little bit more depth, right? So this room, unfortunately, has tables that aren't on wheels and chairs that aren't on wheels. So if you're trying to go into different configurations, it's going to be a little bit more of a hassle. I don't think we have to worry about ruining the floor. There's already rust spots on the floor. So there we go, all right? In Science 1111 downstairs, there are 6 monitors and 10 whiteboards, okay? And it seats 40 people as well. They're on wheels so that you have a little bit more flexibility, okay? Over in Tower, in 4105 by Education, that room is designed for 28, but it's gonna be a little tight there. It has some ceiling mics, a really good sound system that we're testing in there. And it has, I think, 5 smaller monitors and smaller whiteboards. It's what we could fit in amongst the windows and the doors. There's a ton of doors in that room, okay? We're trying to retrofit it, all right? Also in Tower, in 2121A, next to the Writing Center, that small, tiny room, we've got 4 monitors, 4 whiteboards, 4 round tables. They don't move either, but we think that they'll work in that room. So we're trying out some different configurations of active learning rooms, and we really want your feedback as you're teaching in these rooms as to what's working so that we can see what we might need to tweak, all right? Universities all across the country are adopting these active learning classrooms because the research shows it works. That you have higher grades for students, higher retention in that you don't have as much absenteeism for classes, and you have higher retention in subsequent classes. And on our resource, on the schedule, I have a resources link that I will change from gray to black so that you can see it, that will have links to some of the research that shows you this. Also, the University of Minnesota has been kind of a leader in active learning classrooms, and they hold a conference every other year. So maybe this next summer, we could find some funds for a group of us to go. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, all right. So one of the nice things about this room is that these monitors here are not just really for displaying. They're for students to do their work. It wouldn't really be right for us just to put all of this investment in this technology just to have it as being a display. So what we do is we want people to do their work. So that's why we've got you in these groups, and we had 1 person in your group to log in with your laptop. You're going to be that group's vehicle for that. And so what we're going to do is have you join into a Google Doc on the screen, and you're going to add your names and your department numbers, okay? And so what I need to do is when you look on the sheet on your paper, you've got a document that you can go to that if you get into there, I think that you can pull up that Google Doc and go to your page for your group. Okay? One of the things about active learning is there's just a lot of instructions for how people work together, and that takes up quite a bit of time. Time management really in the active learning classroom is one of the challenges. So as you're working in this document, as you're going to that URL on your document, and the table number 1 is at the far end, 2, 3, 4, and 5, scroll down on that page to your document, to your space, and just talk to each other, add your names and your departments, okay? And if you need some help with that, we can walk around and help you, okay? So let's just take a couple minutes and do that.
No, it's just.
When they turn it over.
Okay, so I'm supposed to be switching this to HDMI. John, we're not switching to the HDMI 3 here. Okay.
You gotta go to, you gotta use the input button.
I thought we did. Okay.
And then just go to input.
Okay, all right, thanks. So what we did was we switched so that you're seeing only your screen. Okay? Hello, mouse.
Oh, so good.
You can put students in it or something.
Yeah, I gotta ask because I already teach it.
If it were Rachel, I probably would have said that.
I've never had it for my students plugged in their own device, but I teach in this room and I've always had it set up in groups and I had to organize groups before.
Hard to
So we're amazing now that there's no main screen. So physics I still do a lot of boards. I'm gonna have to have it sorted that way. Not right on the board. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I gotta have it like it's not like messing around with the space. But at least the main screen layers. Yep, so I can do a main screen, so I was looking around there, and I can do all the screen, so they'll all look in a different direction, and I need them all to be a little less sound, quite a bit less. I mean, I can move around a little bit, but I can't redraw the same pictures.
What happened to group 2?
Yeah. I wish there was a screen there. Yeah. Because that would just, I could have another, like, give a table here, like what I've done in the past. Like have a table of 4 students on like this around the table. So that they can all look at the front and see what I'm doing. So then they can somebody have a screen here, and have a screen here, or these two have a screen here. I'm gonna probe that if they. Around these tables, so fast.
Can I have your attention? Can I have your attention, please? Okay, all right, so notice that everybody's screen is different. You can see your own screen. But what I can do is, if I really wanted to show group 3 to everybody, I could, if each of your tables was in Zoom, have you share your screen, and then, because we're all in Zoom right now, then everybody would see your work on that screen, on their screens, okay? So that you could have, and so you could have any kind of combinations. I was flipping from HDMI 3 to 2 or to 3 up there, and I was doing everything at once. But I could come to any one of these and flip just one, okay? All right.
Jan, I have a question. So we are all in the same Google document right now, so we found theater casework. But let's say I wanted someone to be separate. I didn't want other people to see. So that's when I would use Zoom, because then they would just be in theirs, and then I could share their document with everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we did put, we used this Zoom document here so that one, we could collect all your information, attendance taking, all right?
Okay.
But also to talk about how you might have some questions that say, well, I can just do this in Zoom, in Google Docs anyway at the table. Why do I need all of this equipment? Well, if you're doing it and everybody's doing it down on their laptops there, heads are down, they're not talking to each other. Okay? And you can't turn somebody off like you can up here. All right, I can flip it and switch it. All right. Any questions about that?
So what's this, is this Zoom that you need to get on to set it all up then?
So if you, depending on what you want to do, you can use Zoom to display one to many if it's not yours up at the front station. But if you're not planning to do that, you do not need to use Zoom.
What would you use then?
Well, you could just use, you could have everybody working in the same Google document. You could just say, move to this
Okay,
different
so
spot.
Google Docs.
If you wanted to do that, but maybe you want people working on websites, doing some different research type thing. So you can do that. Can you think of some other things that you might use it for?
I mean, we use this for POGL a lot. If everyone teaches a POGL, you know, everyone, their POGL activity is on at each desk and they go through it with that.
Okay.
So.
So then you
What was that?
Yeah.
No, sorry, I have no clue what that is.
We teach sometimes with POGL, process oriented goal, whatever the acronym is.
Okay. So I'm okay not knowing what the acronym is.
Right.
Okay, good.
And so it's kind of like a sophisticated worksheet or activity they go through. And so, and they're doing it in groups and they have assigned tasks or roles in each group, kind of normal stuff, right? And so we just have a Google Doc with the POGL activity and every group goes through that POGL activity. You know, POGL maps really well to this sort of environment.
You could do writing classes where everybody's writing on something and then it's up there. What's nice about it as the teacher is that you can be walking around and see whatever's going on and you're not having to punch over and invade some space type of a thing, whatever's going on.
I could see students too, if all of them have their own computers. You know, we're like here, if all of us had our own computers and we were editing this document. It's just easy for all of us to see what's being written on a central display. So it's easier for us to work together.
This is how we work in meetings.
So right now we're cabled up and my new laptop and my new tablet don't have HDMI, you know, because I cast to everything. Do you know if there are plans to get casting, you know, any of the types of casting to these screens?
We're evaluating some products right now. What
Okay.
we're finding is a lot of the infrastructure kind of violates all of our wireless security. So we've got it, until we find a product that's not going to actually allow people access to things that we don't want them to have access to. What we're kind of recommending is possibly entering into a Zoom environment where you're casting, you have one device that's connected to the machine and you're zoomed in with another device, sharing with that to the screen. That's kind of the solution right now. So if you want to be cableless, you can use Zoom to do that. Jamie described that process better than I can. But yeah, right now we're still evaluating, trying to find something that will allow us to do that.
Zoom is terrific because if everybody's in Zoom and you just mute it, then everybody can be sharing things. You can just pick on any student and say, share what's on your computer right now.
Can we do that here where there's breakouts then? So could you have each one be a breakout?
Yep, you could.
And then everyone zooms into that kind of central screen?
Well, everybody is, and it just depends on what you want to display, how you want, if you want all screens to show it, or if you just want it to show on that one screen. Switch it from 2 to 3. 2 to 3. Yep, right. So this was an exercise. You did your first active learning, or your second active learning exercise today. But it did was, it also made everything puzzle, right? So that you have part of the larger class, not just your small group. What we're going to do now is we're going to hear from Donna and Sharon and Andrew about how they've been using it in their classrooms. And I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Andrew, do you want to talk from your screen perspective?
Sure, your presence here.
Why don't you go over there by the mic?
Yeah, I think we can stand in this area maybe and talk loud so that hopefully the Zoom people can hear you.
Sweet.
So when Andrew stepped up to be here today, I said, anything Andrew says will be gold. Because I think student input
We'll see,
at
we'll
faculty
see.
sessions is very, very fun. So thank you, Andrew, for being here.
Yeah, of course. So hello, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces in the room. It's good to be back on campus as well. So last semester, I had the opportunity to take social welfare policy with Dr. Richardson. And that was a really cool class. And we were actually downstairs I'm blanking on the room right now.
1206.
1206, yeah. So that room was set up a little different. How that was set up is each in the four corners was a screen, and then there were a couple like desks in front of there. And I think probably the coolest thing about the classroom was how sort of dynamic it was in terms of the space. So we were able to move desks around, move chairs, sort of come together in the middle of the room. And so it was really cool just for collaborating with groups. And how the classroom was set up itself was sort of a blended learning environment. So we met one time a week. And then we also did projects outside of the classroom as well. And those were all on Blackboard. So how it was kind of set up is we did all of our reading materials and sort of preparation outside of the class. And then we'd come into the class and have a discussion. So I think what was interesting about that is you could really tell in the class who was prepared and who was not. Because if you didn't do the reading, yeah, because if you didn't do the reading outside of class, it was very obvious in that space who was engaged and who was not, because it was so close and sort of personal. I think unlike a traditional classroom. Something else that was cool that we've done already is, for group collaboration, you're able to pull up your screen for the entire group. And also for the classroom. So sometimes we would kind of break into small groups, talk about a topic, whether it was education, social welfare programs, trying to think of other ones, just these topics that we were discussing. We would discuss those in our small groups and then break into the larger group. And I think for that environment, it was really cool because, of course, it was a social welfare policy class within social work. So I think in that type of environment, discussing in groups is really important, and that's what these classrooms allowed us to do. Let's check out my notes, see if I'm missing anything. I think what Jane mentioned too about attendance was really important, because sort of in a classroom structure like this, whether we're kind of looped like this or it's like, kind of divided on the walls next to the monitors, you really can't tell who's there and who's not. So even if there was someone absent, it was kind of like, oh, they're not here today. And it wasn't like awkward or anything like that, but you could certainly tell. So I think it more or less encouraged people to come to class. I guess sort of a con of the room that I experienced personally myself. I was out in Colorado over spring break doing some horseback riding, and I ended up getting bucked off my horse and I got a concussion. So coming back to class, Dr. Richardson was really, helpful in terms of me getting back on my feet. But being in a room like this with a lot of light and screens was sort of problematic. So I had to take about a week or two off from classes, but I got caught back up in no time. So it was a really great space, and I'm really glad I was able to experience it. And I think it's certainly, a type of classroom that I really took a lot away from just from that learning environment. And I really enjoyed the blending learning environment itself, being able to, sort of prepare outside of the classroom, but then come back in and have those discussions. And what it really did was it showed me how sort of the ideas from social work were in my own life, because I was reading the material outside of class and working in Student Senate. We really tried to bring some of those social work ideas and values into our own practice. Like Swipe Out Hunger is a program we're doing on campus to just help students who have food insecurities. So just, having that in my life the whole semester really brought it full circle for me. Yeah, thank you. And I can offer comments or anything about stuff.
I think it would flow better.
Okay, all right, so we'll flow. So I do have a handout if you want to share a little bit. But otherwise, so I want to talk a little bit about how I use this in research. So I teach American social welfare policy, but I also teach in the undergrad program social work evaluation, which is our research course. Our policy course is an intensive writing integrated generalist course. Andrew is not a social work major right now. We might change your mind on it. Just maybe. Yeah. But that's an open course that is a gen ed course. So research is also a writing intensive course. So I am blessed to teach two courses that are pretty writing intensive in this special atmosphere. So we designed the class. So I designed the class by we, I mean I. So that we did do the hybrid work outside. I have an example of the questions that we asked on Blackboard, the checklist of what you had to do before you come to class, the discussion, posting, the initial posting always was due before class time, and then your replies to other learners would do after class, so you can process that a little better. In research, I divided up, and policy, I divided up the time so that the first hour was spent, I did welcome everyone with some music on Pandora, played on all screens, or some cool video. We had some likes moments last year, that were related to policy. But that was helpful to just kind of welcome people to a space and get them grounded and united. And then we would review Blackboard, any assignments we had due that week, the following Sunday, make sure that all the questions were answered, and then move into all of my face-to-face time is designed for individual questions. So first, it's questions you think about yourself and prepare yourself for small group work. So in this example, will you scroll down? So there's my Blackboard, what they have to do. You can link on all of this and the links from Blackboard. Is there more? Is there more? Can you scroll down a little bit more? So I throw out a Google Doc like this every class period and space it out. So just the individual questions are asked. And this is a sample from one of our research courses. So we're focusing on ethics of research. And so I have individual time where they're welcome to use Google, but prepare themselves for small group discussion on philosophical ethics, problem solving, science problem solving, and then our own social work code of ethics. So trying to bring in our liberal arts component to a social work lens. And then they'll think through that, come up with their own answers. In this exercise, now this room doesn't have it, Jane, but 1206 has those mini whiteboards. So for this particular exercise, there's little whiteboards hanging up in 1206. Each student had one of those and would write down their ethical, how they understood it in their own words, those 3 different types of understandings. Then they joined their small group. We always try to mix it up, number off differently or pick my birthdays or whatever. So every small group had a different interaction. Those small whiteboards then, they presented to their group what they understood those ethical considerations need to be. And then we moved into small group discussion, so then that was in your own table, so you mixed it up. So we were never at the same space, same tables, you're always in different small groups. And then when we finished small group discussion, then we bring it back to a large circle. So no one person had the room and you weren't protected by tables, but we had to interact personally. So we have chairs down there that roll and are super comfy. So we rolled into a large group and they led the discussion on what they found and how they were going to apply it. And then we roll back out into our small groups and work through some more questions. And then my second half of my 2 hours is learning loud. So in research, they're writing a research proposal. So they actually, each individual is now sitting in small groups with new people, new ideas, and they're working on their research, whatever's due that week. And before they leave, in this particular instance, they had to give me 2 paragraphs handed into the Google Drive before they could leave. But that also gave me the opportunity to walk around to small groups, sit next when I could hear questions being asked or processing, maybe some coaching or mentoring that needed to be done in the research process. It really gave me the opportunity. And what Jane said, what I found as an instructor, the completely different thing about flipping classroom and these learning type lab settings is that I really got to see what everybody was working on. Because when we're set up this way, I can't see what's on your screen. I can't hear because it's not in small groups where I can walk around. And that rolly, I know these aren't rolling chairs, but that ability to come together in large group really let the students lead the class and lead the learning instead of me. I just guide through a Google Doc and how I lined up stuff, but otherwise students were doing most of the talking and most of the doing. The second part of that lab with actually writing the research or writing intensive papers, that's where I got to sit down next to them and say, and they'd say, I'm struggling with this. And first they'd ask their peers, just as you would in the workplace. And then they might be brave enough to raise their hand or say, can you come over here? And that whole group would then learn. Or sometimes the room would go silent. And then you know, like, okay, they're not the only person struggling with this. Being sure, it really did connect us as a group. And it really did shift that power dynamic, which was important to me. And lastly, so if you've never used one, it's really cool to meet with Jane and her team. But the last one is a recommendation by Jane. We used Zoom. Peer feedback was given via Zoom. So on a Google Doc, a person in research wrote up their proposal outline.
then students went in as they sat at their table, looked at that on Google, and then would separate out into different parts of the room or in the hallway or wherever they wanted to go, and record feedback via Zoom to the other learner. So they had written in Google their comments, and then they also videotaped. And this is a challenge to me now to actually start grading them. I give feedback, not only in writing, but also verbally, and you can see my wonderful head. So, all right, so that's all I got. I don't know.
It's a lot.
Yep.
How many students do you have in your class?
I'm usually around 15 or 20.
Okay. Is that kind of a max? I mean, how many was?
Well, 1206 was different too. Maybe
1206 had 24 students, but when I worked at the University of North Dakota, we had a 180 student room. And it worked. Yes. Different strategies, but it worked. Andrew?
I would just completely agree. I think the opportunity in that room in terms of like one-on-one FaceTime FaceTime with the instructor was really cool because, you know, the instructor is able to walk around the room, really interact with students. It's not like a traditional classroom where you're trying to move around desks to get to a student. So it was really cool from that perspective, just for the one-on-one FaceTime, I think.
I would just add, I'm gonna be in here teaching anywhere from like 25 to 35 students teaching physics this fall, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you want to stop by, email me. I'm happy to let you come in, visit a class and see what I'm doing in here.
Are there any plans in the future for making classrooms for bigger classes?
Yep.
With more than 40 students?
We hope so. And we felt really lucky that we were able to squeeze in up to 40 this summer. The more you guys use these, the more we can advocate for larger classrooms, okay? And let's try to work the bugs out in a smaller classroom so that if we're investing in lots of monitors, we get it right in those larger classrooms. Okay? Incidentally, I know already a couple of people have said, hey, I've been trying to get into a classroom like this, but I can't. One of the resources that I've linked up is, it's about seat time doesn't matter or something. In this research, they found out that you can reduce your class time together by 66%. So maybe you don't have to be in this room Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe you're only in this room on Wednesday. 2 other people can come in on Monday and Friday. We might be able to share this, coordinate it. I don't know. Let's see what works.
Jane, one thing, and I'll wait until after Donna presents hers, but one of the things I'd like to hear about is if, and you and I talked about this a little bit, if we want to use videos, and if we want to use these monitors with individual videos for each group, is there a way that we can do that? So in other words, if I had case studies, or in our case, teaching strategies, we have video material, I could so easily see group 1 be working on one teaching strategy that's actually modeled with video that we have, group 2 a different one, and somehow they do an activity or report out. And the question I have is how we isolate sound with that. If we're able to do that, are we able to have audio on the speakers? Is it impossible, John, to isolate sound?
Yeah, what you'd have to do is bring in a device that would allow people to connect earbuds, because
Right.
there's too much noise in the room.
Exactly.
Ultimately.
Right.
So there'd have to be a headphone solution that would be brought in.
We looked at that and we found online that you can get a jack that takes up to 6 sets of headphones, I
Yeah.
think, that hardwires right into the monitor for like $10.
Nice.
Or you can have the students on their own device, even their smartphone, log into the Zoom and put their headphones on, and they're just sitting around them, but they're not even looking at their device. The one person who's managing it is up there, and they're all just hearing that same thing. So I think there's some options. Let's try them out. Let's see what works.
Thanks.
Donna, let's hear from you.
So Shelley's work in using the classroom full time is really inspiring, and I'm going to be in Science 1111. So over the summer, I've been brainstorming how to rewrite a math class to fit in one of these rooms, and sometimes I think that certain disciplines lend themselves a little easier to managing if you get away from the traditional, writing all the math notes. I know you guys are gonna get really excited, so I won't talk about math too much, but writing all the math notes on the board, and how do you handle that in a technology-based room when your course doesn't easily translate to typing on a screen? Last year, I used Twiddle6 a few times and used it in some key places in my classroom. But before I share some of those and some other pieces, I want to just get into some of the nuts and bolts. So we come to these wonderful academic technology institutes, we get really inspired, we think about all these things that we could do, and then sometimes we walk away and we're like, oh, but how would that work? Ooh, but I would still need to. So I want to get to talking about some of those nuts and bolts. So on your screen, there is a survey. You're going to be working with your groups. You're going to be doing a little Google form. There's only 2 questions. And so I would ask if you would please, in each of your teams, if you would click on that link and as a group, discuss your answers. Somebody obviously will be the scribe, but ensure that we use our Benedictine values and get everyone's feedback going in.
You gotta change the link so it's tiny URL, not tiny rural.
Oh, miss typo.
You gotta press change. That. And then a UR and apply.
Technology.
And if we could show the individual screens.
Yep.
Okay, so it takes a while to come back, okay? I can't run my VCR at home. I can't believe I'm making this work.
Okay, so 2 questions. So this is a chance to brainstorm and get some of the nuts and bolts thoughts that you might have. Some positive takeaways and some things that you're thinking, I'm not so sure about. So I'll give you just a couple moments to do so. All right.
We use the new format, students using group work.
My favorite thing already. One person can write to that was called.
With all the so excited. And I was like, it's a very disappointing look.
Bring it out. Just be very efficient.
I could put a worksheet on your screen.
It's Sarah.
Along with the letters and writing that everyone can see, it makes the sharing easier. So the sharing of that
it does allow you to.
It makes it easier to share that with not just your own group.
If you're interested in
Some wonderful discussion surrounding question number 1, which is awesome. Please make sure that you also work on question number 2.
You were scheduled to teach this room with products and designs. And here it's wow, I was just gonna say it's like just the layout.
So when you're talking about pair-based programming, you're thinking about just 2 individuals working together?
Yeah, there's a whole methodology for it, so we've done our lab. It's really kind of
The whiteboard is less of a concern. Yeah, I think I'm more worried about screens. Then you have PowerPoint slides that have up 12 things, and then I have a small report.
So
I'm just trying to figure out how that works. I wish the whiteboard was bigger.
Students don't have their laptops with them or
Yeah.
So all the three students are the only one able to plug into those. That's why I was wondering, this is, I think.
So we're gonna come back together, there's some great conversations going on, and I hate to stop those, but for the sake of time, we need to come together. So let's just kind of have an open time of just sharing like a word or a phrase that you feel from the first question. What's some of the key points that you came up with on your first question? Because I see a lot of similarities. Shout it out.
Increased engagement.
Increased engagement, nice.
Visibility of thinking.
Visibility, yes, sharing of thinking.
It makes it safer for students to use risks.
Good,
Don't have to print as much.
yes. Just lovely. Good stewardship.
Somebody here said accountability.
I saw accountability on several screens. Yes, very nice. Let's go to question 2. What are some things that still kind of leave question marks in your mind? Or you're still trying to picture how to translate into a room such as this?
My biggest fear would be, what happens when the tech fails? Because I have it in tower that wireless internet often, I shouldn't say often, but sometimes just stops working, and so then what do you do? So the need for always feeling like I had a plan B, so kind of 2 lesson plans would be something that I would.
So let's pause it for a minute, because I think that's a really big fear. Anyone have any thoughts on that? So you're in a classroom like this, you're ready to roll out your lesson, and maybe there is a thunderstorm or whatever, or the internet is out. What might be an option? Let's problem solve.
Big poster paper, markers.
Ah, very nice.
It might take a little longer to give the directions, but old school works.
Okay, so you can utilize the whiteboards or poster boards. Good.
The problem with the whiteboards, and I've been using them, is that there's nothing to have afterwards. They're erased unless somebody takes a picture of it, which works.
Yes.
But that's a strategy. That's a useful strategy. And in fact, what I've seen instructors do is if you're on the whiteboard for your assignment that you're submitting for that day, you submit the picture of the whiteboard and you submit a picture of your team. That's kind of another attendance thing. So the instructor gets uploaded in Blackboard or something, 2 photos. And even as I was talking about the 180 room student classroom, that instructor knew those students. Okay.
Another option.
Well, if the internet's not down, I've just put everything, everything's already up on the drive. People have their devices. At least somebody in the group has a device. They pull it up. We work in small groups on the little whiteboards that we have, and then we do it that way. So I've had displays go down, as John knows, because I have desperate phone calls like, the projector's not working, and I just move on to class until it gets fixed. So.
Another choice is that then they take that lesson and they work in that outside of class time after the internet's back up, because when the internet's back up, then it would be available. You can have them connect via Zoom. They can work out together as a team, or you can assign that individually. Some thoughts there. Other drawbacks. Yes.
So I've taught in this room a lot, and the one thing is that side of the room just doesn't get used. So is there a way to put a screen on that counter, just sitting there, or?
We're working with facilities to see what we can do with this
Okay.
side of the room. We have the capability with this system to add 2 more screens.
Okay.
So we're trying to see what we can do. It's a little bit of a more involved process. It's not just hanging the TV. We gotta tear some stuff out.
Tear some stuff out. Because I was in here messing around a little bit when I saw the new setup, and I was trying to figure out, because I teach physics, so a lot of stuff's going to be just like the drawings and stuff on the front board. Because going around and doing individual drawings for everybody on the sideboards didn't seem practical. So it'd be nice if I could use more chairs so that people could see it that way. Mm-hmm. And then I would say this room doesn't have wheelie things, but when I've had to rearrange it with my class, it takes 3 to 5 minutes if you get your class in here to put it into any configuration you want. We've gone from a complete lecture hall setup in here to small groups in 3 to 5 minutes.
And on the furniture note, we are working with facilities too, each year, giving them rooms that we like to see, tables and chairs with wheels. Their budget's limited, just like everybody's is, so they're doing what they can. I think they did 3121 in Tower this year. That's a big room, so they kind of spent all their budget on that space. But we are working on it, so a little bit more flexible.
And on that furniture note, something that works really well, I've seen other places that I want to do here is you can use PowerPoint, just use like the little square drawing tools, draw some room layouts and just say, this is what room layout we're going to have for class. Whoever gets there first, try and get the room set up like this. Like sometimes students get there 5 minutes before you, they're milling around. They can, if they know what they need to do, they'll do it. So that's another good option. PowerPoint, drag and drop, easy. Or Google Slides.
So the information that you've added on these slides will be helpful or on the Google form. If you, somebody, whoever is the scribe, if you would go ahead and submit that, that would be appreciated because then you can collect that information. So I want to give you maybe a way of going into the shallow end and starting use of these rooms if you were to go in and just start. So given that a lot of what I do, with math symbols and students showing their work, classic words in math, it may be more difficult to think about how you would do that electronically. But what I've done, one lesson that I'll give you as a sample is there is a test or an assessment where there were a lot of fine details and students traditionally would miss some of those fine details, but it was really important in that class conceptually. And so what I did is I took and I wrote questions similar to whatever my students will be able to goals. And I gave similar concepts to each of the different pods. And they had to write on their own paper solutions for that, which they turned into me. But then what they did is they created study notes on the screen for their classmates. So I have the problems already on the screen. They added study notes. They also had to go out and find a website, whether it's a YouTube video or another site that had information about that concept, whether it's understanding some of the vocabulary, whatever it was that hang up for that particular concept. And this was a 2-day lesson, so they solved their problems on paper. They turned it into me and made sure that it was right, communicated with them if there's any kind of errors. The second classroom, they were to have their notes, study notes for their other classmates completed, and I gave them back their solutions. But then I just scanned them and shared those out with the rest of the class in a Google Drive. I'm trying not to photocopy any more than is not needed. And so they had everybody's handwritten solutions that they could then, that were linked through the class, through Blackboard, and the link to the Google Doc. And then they each presented their own individual piece. So like maybe this group was working with a concept and there was a particular piece I wanted to make sure they understood. So I only had to say it once. So I worked with this group, I really talked them through whether it was the vocabulary or the steps, or whatever it was that was key for that problem, made sure that they understood the work through asking them, leading questions and looking at the work that they did, looking at the resources they had to share with their classmates. And then they were, in that second class meeting, empowered to share that then with the rest of the class. And that, of course, made a much more powerful learning resource because they were teaching it to the other classmates, but they had that chance to make sure, of course, that they had it right and that they got that depth of understanding. And I was really happy with that activity. When we did the assessment a few class meetings later, you could really tell the strength that came through from the students' presentations and how that really cemented the understanding, kind of closed some of the gaps, filled in some of the potholes. And so there's ways to utilize these rooms without jumping in to the deep end. If you're looking at Shelley's work and saying, wow, that's awesome, which it is, I'm like impressed. And you're thinking, I don't know if I can do that for my first step. So there's ways that you can just kind of come in the shallow end, if you will, connect with Jane for 1206. So I just gave you one very simple thing. I use Google Docs. I love the Google products, Google Docs, Google Forms, Google Sheets. It's a great way to do collaboration in these type of rooms. And then I see what every group is doing. And it's very easy to take that with me I can see it anywhere I want to. I don't have to carry these papers around. I don't have to photocopy them. And kind of an advantage that I have is that, I don't know about you, I'm sure many of you are like this. You've got your lessons planned ahead of time, way ahead of time. And then the night before or the morning of, it's like, oh, you get this aha moment. You can so easily go in and change things because you just go into that Google Doc and you change it before the students ever see it. And it's very easy to edit, you know, the day of, or even on the fly. If you see something and you're like, yes, this would be a good change, so you can go in and you can change that. And then everybody's papers, if you will, their documents show that change. And that's a really neat way to keep that learning situation very fluid from both sides of the desk, both sides of the classroom, which I found exciting. Any questions? Yes.
I am so impressed with the use of technology in these classrooms, and I'm just wondering, those of you who taught in a technology-rich classroom, have you ever had any issues with equity? Like, I'm always thinking, what if my students don't have access, like, you know, to all of this outside of class, or feel impaired in some way because of lack of access?
That's a good question. We found through our Google surveys that between smartphones, tablets, or the, you know, a computer, a laptop, that we have, what, 1% of our students or less than 1%?
Less than 1% of students have
Right.
nothing. 94% of students have laptops. 87% of students have phones. 37% of students have tablets, which is a number I have to see about working with. But
That's
somebody in the
people
group's
that
going to have it.
responded, right? And
Yeah.
people are more likely to respond if
Well,
they already have devices.
You're right. You're
So
right.
let's
But
cover
that's
that a little bit.
You're right. There's that.
And doesn't the library still have laptops for students to check out also?
And iPads.
So, and iPads, so you can direct them to the library too.
I think they can check them out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we only have 3 iPads.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we do have laptops for checking.
And kind of on that equity note, that's one thing that I really like about the whole Google Suite is it's provided, it's free, it works on any, like, I use a cheapo $100 Chromebook as my main driver for everything. And that's one thing that's nice is it works on that. And I'm trying to, you know, think about that when I'm looking at this is, you know, you don't need to have a MacBook Pro to run 98% of the stuff that we do. Using the Google Suite is a really good way to make sure it is accessible to, you know, everyone's computer, not just those who have like a super high YouTube, same sort of thing. Google does a really good job of making their devices actually work with any level of tech.
My default is computer labs. So students, you know, there's computer labs that they can use on campus 24/7, are they not available?
Yeah,
Downstairs?
But how, and Donna, how would that help if they don't have devices in the classroom? So again, my concern would be isolating students by having them work individually on, it's a question of access in the classroom also, right?
In the
I wouldn't want a student to feel embarrassed because she or he didn't have something that I was asking them to use in the classroom.
In the classroom, I advocate for just one device
Okay.
out per team.
Okay.
And so it's whoever gets that device out first.
I always bring to class my phone, my laptop, and we have a department iPad. I bring them all to class. So if anybody dropped their computer last night, didn't have anything, they're always welcome to use my stuff. And I can see if they're looking at my Facebook.
And we,
I'm just teasing.
I teach in a class that requires Android device for every student, and again, and equity and stuff is an issue in that. And so we have a pool of 20 or Android phones and stuff and tablets that we just bring to class, and the students can check them out for the whole semester. So sometimes you do, depending on how specific your technology needs are, you do have to do that. But, you know, we can buy, you know, 20 tablets or phones relatively cheap these days. So.
I think it's a really important item to think about. And so there's a variety of ways then that you might accomplish that. But it is something to be mindful of. So I sometimes will do a survey at the beginning of the year, and I'll say, like I do it like for graphing calculators. I will never say, all right, who has a graphing calculator? Because if you have them, we can use them on the test. Otherwise, nope, it's just scientific calculators. You never want to do something like that. So I just ask students to send me email email. If they do or do not have, choose which way you want to get the answers. So that you can collect that information without them responding in a class. And that just can give you that feedback then. So you can send out a little Google form, which of these devices do you have? And the Google Suite has just been such a lifesaver. It's so easy to use. And like Eric says, it can be used on any device. Very easy for you as the professor to get running on that. And the students love it. So easy to share, easy to amend. A great way to collect that information.
So we have 5 minutes over time, but this is one of the biggest challenges in an active learning classroom. It just goes and goes and goes. And so it's really, you have to kind of learn, get into a sense of how long to have an activity be, how much time to allow things, but also what to extend beyond that, the discussion here. Could we continue it in Blackboard in a discussion board or something else? How to manage that, because you get so much more. And so really with this time, we're not going to be able to do an activity that we have planned, and which is why you have markers, beautiful, vibrant colored markers, that's what it says on the box. And on the table is that I was going to show up something and say, how would you map this as far as the different components? I don't know, Eric, you can just scroll up a page, just a down page or something. I was going to have you get in your small groups and say, okay, 5 things here. How do these things work together in an academic classroom? And then you guys all be doing your own thing there, and then snapping a picture, sending it to me with your group, so that I knew who was here, who was in that group, and what you had. You're not going to be able to do that, but feel free to take a vibrantly colored marker with you so that you can use it in your next whiteboard room. And if you have any questions, please talk to Shelley, talk to Donna, talk to others who might be there. And if you want to take a look at classrooms, like what we can work out there, don't forget to go to the site, the tiny URL, .com, AUG, 18 ATI, do a quick reflection out there of this, and then if you all of these